When I first got my camera, I was so eager to learn everything about photography. I picked up terms, techniques to help me improve, and one thing that I didn't learn though were stops. It was hella confusing and I put off learning for the longest time. This is what happens when you master stops. Actually, I just used one of the auto modes. What are stops anyway? Do I need to learn how to use them? How are they useful to me? Today, we're going to go through what you need to know about stops, why it is not necessary to know if you're shooting photos in a certain way, and when it is vital in two kinds of situations. Stops are units of measurement for exposure, and exposure comes in the form of three variables in photography: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, notoriously known as the exposure triangle. So what does stop actually mean?
One stop up means doubling the light, and one stop down means halving the light.
What does that mean? For ISO, every time you double your number, for example, you're going from 100 to 200, that means you're going one stop up. Likewise, for one stop down, if you half your ISO going from 800 to 400, that's one stop down. And if you go from 800 to 200, that means two stops. Every stop is halving, so 800 to 400 and 400 to 200. For shutter speed, it's really the same situation. For every time you double your shutter speed, you're going one stop up, and when you're halving it, you're going one stop down. For aperture, the numbers work a little bit different, and honestly, I cannot remember for the life of me how it all works. So here's a chart to show you. Pragmatically, you only really need to remember these numbers to understand that there are stops between each one of them. So why does any of this matter when I'm using auto modes? It doesn't. The camera does pretty much everything for you, and if you increase or decrease the exposure, all you need to do is just use the exposure dial to let the camera know that you want more or less exposure. The camera will do all the calculations for you. In manual mode, however, because you're setting all three of the variables in the exposure triangle yourself, understanding stops will help you get a consistent exposure. But here's the thing, I don't really care about consistent exposure if I shoot raw, or at least it's not that big of a concern. If there's a slight difference, I can always edit that in post. So if it's not needed for auto modes, and if you're not too fussed about slight inconsistencies in manual mode, what is learning stops useful for? So there are two situations. First, when you need absolute consistency in your photos. Understanding how light works is necessary. If I'm changing my settings to cater a particular style, i.e. capturing motion blur, background separation, or even having a bit more grain, I need to know how to maintain that same exposure if I've increased the aperture, slowed down the shutter speed, etc. Situation number two is when you're not shooting raw. You just won't have the same amount of data on your photos to do those heavy lifting. So doing it the right way before taking a photo is necessary. Do you need to know the exact science for stops? What is one stop? What is two stops? And memorize it off by heart? Not really. And do you even need to follow the measurement? Not really, not in a lot of cases. Do you need to understand how light and exposure works? Yes, this is a must. Luckily, we have tools that enable us to do what we need to do much easier, abstracting the complexity out of, say, needing to understand how stops work. It's not to say it's irrelevant, but your tools can do so much nowadays that there may not be a real need to understand what stops are at all. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, help me out and tap on the like button and subscribe. Until next time, bye!